Hi guys, welcome to the K Nation Movement Podcast. My name is Aryan Fazeli. I'm the founder of K Nutri. We just launched our supplements this week. You can find them at knutri.com. And for today's show, I have a very special guest with me, Jovana. You can find her at JovanaFit on Instagram.
A lot of people ask me, they're like, so what did you do? Like, how did you get this many followers? And I'm like, honestly, nothing. Like, sometimes when I sit down and think about it, I'm like, I don't understand what happened. Because like I started this Instagram as like a journal for myself. I was like, I want to have something where I can like look back and see my progress. And I kept it anonymous at the beginning, like wasn't showing my face. Nobody in my personal life knew. And then I was like, wow, people actually are enjoying what I'm saying and are inspired by it. So then I came out and I was like, okay, like this is me. And it just went from there. And I always tell people I just started sharing like my truth, like genuinely what I was going through and what was happening and what worked for me and what didn't. And it just kind of went from there. Yes. And like I find always that that's what does well. Like when I post what I have in my head and in my heart, those posts do so well. Whereas it's really hard to people don't like a sellout, right? Yeah. So there's so many brands that reach out to me and like want to collaborate, and I'm like, honestly, no, I don't want to be that person. So that's also where it's difficult. It's like, how do I still make this profitable without coming across super like salesy? So it's a weird line.
Yeah, it must be tough at this point, especially because you didn't plan to blow up on Instagram. You're just like sharing what you're doing at the time. And so how did that start? Like where did you see the things were starting to get, a little bit out of hand with,
Well, I remember, I think it was the end of 2015. It was literally like New Year's Eve. And I was like, oh, like all I want for New Year's is like, I hope my account reaches 10,000 followers. I was like, that would be awesome. That's like a cool milestone. I'll be like this, in this middle ground where I can still share like what I love and have people following me. And literally the next day I went from like 7,000 to 10,000 followers on New Year's Day. And I was like, what happened? Like all I did was ask the universe and like it happened. And then I was like, this is awesome. And from there, like literally from 10,000 to 100,000 was like, I don't know what happened. It was less than 6 months. And then I was like, this is going really fast. So I need to find a way to give value to all these people and still stay true to myself. So I had a period there where I was like, what am I doing? What am I sharing? What's the best thing? And like, it took me a while to learn who my audience was. And like, then I learned like, this is what they like, this is what they don't like, this is what they want to know, this is what they don't care about. And I never changed the basis of what I was sharing though. Like I always stayed true to like, this is what I'm going through right now. Whether I gained weight, lost weight, had a good day, bad day, I always just shared that. And it just, like I said, it's like unexplainable. I don't know how it happened, but it was just like almost an overnight thing.
Yeah.
It was insane.
It's honestly really cool. And like the fact that you did it through like bringing people a significant amount of value and being as transparent as possible through the whole process. I think most people look on Instagram. We talk about this a lot. Instagram is a highlight reel where you only see people's successes, and very rarely do you see any time or any place where they've like failed at something. So, and I noticed that about you, is like you share a lot of times where like you might be struggling with something, and that's like a very common thing for people that everyone deals with it. It's just some people will put themselves on a pedestal and act like they don't ever go through hard times. And then there's people that like you who are transparent and relate to the average person that is gonna have hard times.
Well, for me, it's all like, it turned a lot into like positivity, self-love, self-care, because I know that's exactly it, right? You follow accounts and like nobody's struggling with anything. So if you struggle with something, you're like, this is not normal. I should just give up because I can't achieve the same thing. So that's really what I wanted to do, is like, no, let's be real. Everyone goes through it. Motivation's a roller coaster. Sometimes you have a lot of it, sometimes you have none. And it's just, that's what I want to put out there. Whether you have this much motivation or this much, you can still keep going. And it's just what I wanted to share, the truth, really. And
like, so you started the Instagram basically to document like your transformation, like both mentally and physically.
Well, at first it was just physically. I didn't know, like when I started, I didn't know how much it would affect me mentally. I didn't know how much things would change. I was like, I just want to lose weight, like most people start. And then I started going through everything and I was like, this is crazy. Like I started noticing that connection of like when things are not right in my head, like it shows, right? And then that's where it kind of took a turn to mental. Yeah, which is
like blows my mind. And for anyone that and we'll link your Instagram later on, but for anyone who hasn't seen your transformation, it's unbelievable. Like there's so much hard work and dedication behind, you know, what you went through from beginning to end. And I know that must have been really tough, especially when you first made that decision to start. What was that like?
Yeah, I remember that day so clearly. I hadn't weighed myself in like 2 years. Yeah. And I was like, okay, you know, I'm probably around 250 pounds, like I've been forever. And I was like, let's just see. So I stepped on the scale and I saw 305 pounds. And I broke down. I started crying. I was like, "What happened? Like, this is not me. This is not okay. I don't want to live like this." And like from that day, I started really noticing. Okay, I go up the stairs. I can't breathe. I can't tie my shoes comfortably. I can't do all these things that are normal. Like, how did I get used to this? You know? And like that week, I was like, "No, I'm done." And it was hard, but cold turkey. I was like, no more this, like I'm changing how I'm eating right away. I cut things out right away and like I sort of took it in steps. So first I changed how I was eating, and then when I was comfortable with a small little routine that I had, then I joined a gym and I went from there. I didn't try to like do it all at once because I knew that's what I've done before. If I try and like front load everything, I'm just gonna stop again. So from that day, like since then, I haven't looked back.
That's amazing. Good for you. Honestly, it's incredible, and I know how hard it must be, especially. I noticed this with a lot of people who, you know, one day they wake up and they're like, "Well, what happened? Like, how did I get here?" To take that first step is extremely difficult. So you know, you started, and like you said, you were initially started with just like eating well and taking small steps, and then getting into the gym. And how long did like that transformation take for you?
I'd say like 3 months. Like within 3 months, I was full speed ahead. And like that's also another thing I like to tell people is like, I didn't know anything. Yeah. A lot of people think like, I don't know anything. I don't know how to eat. I don't know how to work out. Neither did I. Like I knew nothing. I was literally like, I know if I start, you just got to start. Once you start learning things, you pick things up along the way, and you just go from there. So it's another thing people are afraid of, I think, is like, I don't know what's going to happen. I don't know how to do this, so I'm just not going to. And that was a big hurdle for me too. And then I just decided I don't care. Yeah. I'm just going to start with what I know and go from there.
Yeah, and you're glad that you did.
Yeah, and I still don't know I still don't know a lot. You know what I mean? Like it's always, I'm never going to know everything, you know? It's just like a process. It's learning, it's experimenting and seeing what works for you and what doesn't.
Yeah, and I don't think anyone will ever know everything. You know, I've studied like the science of fitness, and like I did work in a lab, and I've like, you know, been experimenting with nutrition and exercise for like well over a decade. I still feel like I don't know anything. You know, like I feel like I don't know anything, and it's tough because there's always more information to explore. There's always new exercises to look at. There's always new models of nutrition. So
the problem is there always is new stuff that's correct and incorrect too, right? So it's hard to know what to trust, what's right, what's wrong, who really knows what they're talking about. So I think there's a lot of misinformation also. So it's hard.
And I'm sure like with, you know, anyone that starts like a transformation or a journey like that, there's a lot of trial and error just kind of on your own, which is part of the process. I think people make an assumption that if it's going to happen, it's going to be laid in stone, and like every day will be perfect, and the next day will be better than the day before that, and then every day you'll wake up at a lower weight than the day before that, and it just seems like it's made up into this magical journey that it's really not. And I don't know if you would agree, but for the most part, like, and I believe in a lot of different kinds of diets or approaches to nutrition. Like, you know, we've specialized in the ketogenic diet, but I'm a big believer in paleo. I'm a big believer in Whole30. And really, a lot of the premise behind that is like cut out the processed sugar and watch how much dietary carbohydrates you're taking in. Like really, that's the premise of any single diet that can help you lose weight. And like, is that something that you experienced?
Absolutely. That was like the biggest change for me was I was eating, my diet was all junk.
Yeah.
It was all eating out a lot. It was a big change for me to start cooking like and eating from home all the time. That was the hardest thing for me, and I think for a lot of people, you know. But once I got over that, it kind of got easier. And like, it's true at the beginning, there is this whole like concept of like cut out every single carb, and like that's kind of what I did in a way, not really, but that's definitely where it starts. That's like what people kind of know already, you know. But yeah, I definitely agree with that.
Yeah.
It's true. The underlying basis of like most diets is the same. Don't eat junk.
Yeah, basically.
Yeah. I started reading labels a lot more. That's one thing I started doing, and seeing like I had sort of a rule with like if it had more than like 5 to 7 ingredients in it, I stayed away from it.
Yeah.
That was kind of what I followed. That helped me in the beginning, and just went from there. Yeah.
It's a pretty good rule to follow. Just, I mean, eating whole foods and getting your stuff from natural sources. It's like the basic principle. And like when you started, were there a lot of struggles at the beginning for you? Especially, I know most people, even myself growing up, like you don't necessarily have the best relationship with food. And it's unfortunate because, you know, it's such a natural way of like eating and communicating and being social. So did you struggle at the beginning at all?
Like, I've got to be honest and say no. I struggled more later on because I think at the beginning I was on a high of like, wow, like I'm doing this. This is awesome. It's working. I had no problem saying no to things. I had no problem asking for substitutions. Like when I went out and like it was fine. It was when when I first plateaued, that's when I started struggling with it. I was like, well, now what? You know, I'm still doing everything right. It's not working anymore. You know, that was the first time I struggled with, you know, food really. But no, in the beginning, I was all like, this is working. This is amazing. I had no problem with it, which is weird, but honestly, that's the truth.
Really good.
Yeah.
You're just like riding that momentum all the way through.
Yeah.
That's awesome.
Had no problems.
And so then you took to social media, which again, I think like Instagram has a bad rep. I think people tend to like blame social media for a lot of bad things that are going on, but it's also a platform that can be used for a lot of good, which is kind of like what you're doing. So, you know, you start putting out like your transformations, documenting your fitness journey, and people start following along, right? So along that time, did you ever feel like you started to get, I don't know, you could call them Instagram haters, or people that maybe call you out and say like this is photoshopped, or they try to bring you down in some way or another?
Luckily enough, it hasn't happened to me a lot. A lot of my followers are very supportive, and I think that has a lot to do with how real I am on there. I think if I always posted transformations and like good things, I might experience more of that, more of like oh, this is photoshopped, this is not real. But I think because I really share both sides, like when I gain weight, I show it. Like I show everything, and people appreciate that. So luckily I haven't dealt with a lot of hate. I've dealt with some weird things, like people stealing my photos, or like diet programs posting my photos saying I followed that, but that's like everyone goes through that. If you post a transformation photo, you're almost putting yourself into that. But hate, I haven't experienced a lot of. Yes, some, but like I've been lucky enough not to get a lot of it. Yeah.
No, I feel like that's actually, you know, really fortunate, because you see a lot of people that deal with a lot of negativity, especially on a platform like Instagram. So like moving forward now, like what's your direction?
That's the big question. It's hard. I don't exactly know, because I had a period last year around this time. I went to like the other end of the spectrum, to be honest, where I was like way too obsessed. I was not eating enough. I was working out way too much. I looked fine, you know, like I lost a lot of weight at that point. But it was unhealthy on the other end of the spectrum. And I noticed that. And this year I was like, I had to take a step back and be like, this is not healthy for me now on this end. I'm way too obsessed. I got to be that person where every morning I was weighing myself, I was taking my measurements all the time, and I was like, what happened? Like, you know, I didn't realize how far the momentum took me, and it took me too far. So this year has really been a self-repairing year for me, where I've, you know, tried to mend the relationship with myself internally and figure out, you know, why was that happening. And now I'm at a place where, like, I don't exactly know what's next for me, but I know that I'm never going to stop doing what I'm doing. I'm going to continue, you know, how I started, and I'm going to kind of go back to what got me this far and go from there. But I don't, the future is, it's still a question mark for me.
Which is the beauty of it, right? Figuring things out as you go.
Yeah.
That's, I mean, I can totally relate to that. It's, you can never really predict what's going to happen. And like you said, like, you've been on a journey, right? I mean, things have changed. You've never really planned for what has happened or what's about to come. But you mentioned something about weighing yourself, and I think most people get really, really discouraged by that process. There are way too many things that factor into your weight that most people, I think, who weigh themselves every morning are more likely to give up on themselves because, you know, especially with women and hormones, there's a lot of factors to take place. So you might wake up on the scale one day and it's like, it says that you're 5 pounds heavier. And obviously you can't put on 5 pounds overnight, but people literally freak out. And I think it leads to them maybe giving up or maybe being discouraged by what's happening.
Yeah, I agree. The biggest thing for me was I got a scale that measured more than just my body weight. So I wasn't necessarily looking at my weight. I was looking at body fat percentage. That's kind of what I used. But absolutely, that's so true. And I went through that too, you know. I'd wake up and be like, no, what happened? I had such a good day. But like, that's something else I try and promote to people is like, measurements are super important too. And I try and encourage people always, like when I'm helping someone out, always take measurements. Not like I did. I was doing it way too much. But I think, like I always say, like once a week is okay. Once a month is even better, just to keep track of what's going on a larger scale. That way you can get a better average. But yeah, once a day is terrible. Especially if you're doing it like once in the evening and then another time in the morning and then another random time. Like you can get so many, you can weigh 5 different amounts in 24 hours. So
yeah, 100%. I've changed like 8 to 10 pounds in 24 hours.
Yeah, absolutely.
Like if you go out and you drink a little bit and you have some junk food and you haven't had carbs in a while, your body now stores those carbs. You now have food in your belly. And if people don't know this, your body also stores water with carbohydrate. So now you've put on weight, but you haven't put on fat. Yeah. And I mean, it's the most important thing for people to not get discouraged. And if it's discouraging you, like literally just throw your scale out. Like don't ever look at it again. You know, take photos, take measurements, like do what you got to do, but like don't obsess over the scale because it's not always going to go down every day. It's not a linear way of weight loss.
I think it's also hard because that's what the medical industry uses as your health identifier, you know, like you go to the doctor, they weigh you and tell you, oh, you're this healthy or that healthy, right? So it's going to be like, that's a hard stigma to break because that's what's used. But
and the BMI, for anyone who doesn't know, the BMI stands for body mass index, and it's measured by taking, I believe it's your weight divided by your height. And so it's just like an absolute crude measure of, you know, your weight class category. And I remember like being in high school and I wasn't, you know, like really overweight by any means, but, you know, went to the doctor, it's like, yeah, your BMI says you're overweight. And I was like, I mean, if you say so, sure, but like I really don't think so. So it's like people who are physically active or just depending on what your weight is for your height, like if you have a doctor that's, you know, prescribing things to you based on your BMI, like you should address that right away, because I think even the person who came up with the BMI came out later on and was like, no, like don't use this. It's like a horrible measure of, you know, your body mass index itself, and we still use it to this day, which is ridiculous.
I mean, according to that chart, I remember like going through this in my head once. I should be like 140 pounds. And I was like, my lowest weight was around 160, and I really looked like I was getting sick. Like I didn't look right anymore. That was when I started feeling weird. Like that's when I noticed things were not okay. And I'm like, imagine if I listened to that and went to 140. Like I don't know what I would look like, what I would feel like. So I don't know. I agree. That's number one. How do you feel? That's what I always say. If you're feeling sluggish, if you're feeling like there's indicators, your body will tell you everything. You know, your body communicates what it needs, right? So if you just tune in and listen to it, it's a way better indicator.
Yeah, everyone's like very unique, not just in their journey, but in their body composition. There's no like ideal frame. There's no ideal journey to getting that, you know, what you pictured in your head being your perfect body, for example. So, you know, when you started your transformation, you started out with just like eating well, and then you got yourself in the gym. So what was that process like? Because I know it's really hard to start in the gym, especially if you don't have a reference point, or you don't have, you know, exercises or a background in fitness. And like you said, you're on a weight loss journey, so it probably wasn't the easiest thing to get in the gym to begin with.
To be honest, I got a personal trainer in the beginning. Because like you said, I didn't know anything. And I knew that like if I just went into it without being a little educated, I could hurt myself. So I invested in a personal trainer because to me, that was like, I'm investing in myself. It's not an expense, it's an investment. So I did that, and I worked with her for a little while in the beginning. And then I just sort of went from there. I sort of built my own things through research online, and like I spent a lot of time online reading things, and you know, I just went from there. And I didn't try and go like 7 days a week because I was like, that's unrealistic. If I set an unrealistic goal, I'm not going to follow through. So I started with like 3 days, increased it to 4, you know, found my sort of schedule and comfort level, and it just sort of became like, after a few weeks, it just became a routine. As with a lot of things, it just felt weird if I didn't go. And the big thing I always told myself was, okay, even if you're not feeling it, if you don't feel like going, just go for whatever, 20 minutes, 30 minutes. That way you're training your mind that this is routine. We're going to go anyways. Even if it's a crappy day, if it's a bad workout, your mind knows, okay, we went anyways, so we have to keep going. So if you feel like you don't want to go and then you just don't, then you easily fall out of the routine. And once you fall out of it, it's really hard to get back.
Yeah, it is. And, you know, you bring up a really good point. Like just showing up, even if you do 20 or 30 minutes, is way better than sitting at home. And I don't think there's ever been a workout that I've done or you've done or anyone has done that they've regretted. It's only been the days that you miss where you're like, damn, like I should have gone in and done that 20 minutes. And then, you know, you bring up a really good point, which is investing in yourself. Like I love that, you know, and we've talked about that a few times in this podcast. Doing anything in life, like whether you're focusing on your work or you're focusing on school or you're spending time in the gym, like these are all investments in yourself. These aren't necessarily sacrifices. So shifting that mindset to I'm investing in myself, I'm investing in the gym, I'm investing to eating well, which is then investing in my body, is way different and more sustainable than thinking like, oh, I'm sacrificing this junk food, or like I'm sacrificing my free time to go to the gym. Well, it's like, no, you're investing in getting yourself physically and mentally better, which is like an amazing thing to do. And whether it's with fitness or nutrition, like you went out and got a personal trainer. And I recommend the same thing like with people that are doing diets. Like I'll reference what we have, which is a ketogenic program, but I've noticed that we get people that come to us and they've had bad experiences dieting on their own because they didn't know where to look and they found incorrect information. And I see that same thing with people who start fitness. They don't necessarily get a qualified personal trainer, or they try to do things on their own and then they get injured, or they do it improperly and then they get discouraged and they stop doing it. So whether it's like learning to ski or learning to skate, dieting, like fitness, I think getting someone who's qualified and investing in that part of yourself is the best thing that you can do. Because, you know, you can go out and throw on a pair of skis and get on a hill and try to teach yourself, and you'll probably get hurt and it'll take you way longer to learn. You probably learn the incorrect movements as well. But if you just invest in yourself from the beginning and get someone who can teach you properly, then you'll probably learn it in half the time and feel like encouraged to keep going.
Absolutely. And I know it's hard for some people. Like I've come across a lot of people who just can't, you know what I mean? And I always say like, regardless. And that's another thing people say is like, well, I can't afford to invest in myself, so I'm just not going to. I'm just going to wait. And I even tell those people, no, don't. Like, do something, you know, even if you can't afford a gym membership. If you can't do it right now, just start and, like, put it out there that that's what you want. And in some way, things will align and work out if it's what you really want. I just so believe in that.
If you, like, really want it, like, you'll find a way to get it, right? If you, like, for example, people who say I don't have time or I don't have the money to like go to the gym or exercise. Well, like, first of all, look at your schedule, look at how much time you're spending a week, and your phone has a great option now. Like, the new iOS on iPhones tells you how much time you spend on social media.
Oh, really?
Yeah, it's really cool. It's almost like you look at it and you're like, yeah, it's like it's like a little check where you're like, oh, maybe I'm spending a little bit too much time on Instagram. But same thing with spending. Like, you look at your credit card bill and you see where your money's going. That's a ranking of your priorities, right? If your number one thing is like fast food and, you know, your gym plan is not on there at all, then you literally just have prioritized one thing over the other. I think that exercise and eating well is two of the most accessible things to people, but you just need the initiative to start, and you will learn as you go.
It's true though. Like, I've done this calculation. This is what I always told myself. Instead of buying a coffee every day, that's my gym membership right there. You know what I mean? So like you said, there's always a way. Even if it's those $5 a day, that's literally what it is. So it's true.
And there's alternatives out there. When I first started going to the gym, I had an amazing gym. I guess a lot of people are not as fortunate maybe, so I shouldn't address this to everyone. But when I first started, there was a gym, 10 minutes from my house, and it cost $17 a month after taxes, and I did that for years. And I was like, that's literally, like you said, it's a coffee a day for like 2 weeks, so I'm sure there's options out there, or you get a pair of running shoes and go outside, which is free, right? And so maybe but our motto has always been like to stay focused and be consistent. And I really, truly, like deep down in my core, believe that is where all success lies, whether it's, at the workplace, in school, or in a fitness journey. Like, can you relate to that at all with what you're doing?
Absolutely. Especially staying consistent. Like, you can do, that's another thing people have this like weird conception about, like, well, I tried really hard for a week and nothing happened, so I'm just gonna stop. And that goes back to the consistency. No, you've got to do it all the time, every day, for a long time, until it becomes like ingrained into your system. And that consistency is definitely number one for me, like what I've noticed.
Did you get any, because I know when I go to the gym, or when I first started going to the gym, it was unbelievable. Like, people talk about, oh, you get these endorphins and like you feel really good, and like I didn't realize how insanely good it felt till I started going, and it was just like I was hooked after that. Did you ever feel like that kind of helped you with like the rest of your life, like coming back and feeling refreshed, or like studying and everything else?
Yeah, it helps a lot with energy level, like not being so sluggish every day. It helped me a lot with my sleep. I slept so much better when I started working out, and I woke up feeling like awake and not still asleep. And I think the times when I notice it most is when I've fallen off my schedule, I've fallen off my pattern. Then I'm like I don't feel the same. Now I know how much it means to stay consistent with it, because as soon as you stop, you go back to feeling sluggish, tired, no energy. So absolutely. And I found like when I started working out, I had so much more motivation for other things. I was like, oh, I've never tried this before. I want to do this. I want to get out and do that. I'm not like, I didn't feel like a hermit anymore, stuck inside. So it was like a whole new world, really.
Yeah, I totally agree with that. I think like my experiences with starting, like, say, the gym or starting new sports has always been that every single time that I take that new step towards something new, it builds my confidence to approach that next thing. So, it was like, I think it was in grade 12 I started snowboarding, and it was like insanely hard at first because I'd never done it. And then after like a couple of years, I started getting better at it, and it felt really good. So then I built the confidence to go into whatever I wanted to do next. So I wanted to learn how to skate on ice, which I never knew how to do. So I did that, and it was like all these things translated into building the confidence that I needed. I was never really good at speaking, like public speaking, or even being in front of a camera. But I just did it, and then it got better over time. But it was like anything you do on day one is going to be terrible. Like, it's not going to feel necessarily right, and it's not going to feel like this magical thing that presents itself to you. But like you said, you got to take the initiative to just do it. If you really want to, you'll find a way.
Yeah. And it helps you realize that you really can do whatever you want. Yeah. Like, there's nobody who can't change their life. Mm-hmm. There's nobody who can't get healthier. Why? You know, that's what I always tell people. Like, anybody can do it. There's nothing special about me or the next person on Instagram or anybody. Like, you can do it. So
it's 100% mindset for sure. Do you get people that message you on Instagram, like sharing, you know, like they've started their journey thanks to you, or they've been inspired by you to take action?
All the time. And it's such a weird feeling, and it's so amazing, and like, it's crazy. Like, it's crazy that you have that impact on somebody, and it's scary. It's a lot of pressure. I sometimes get what's called like imposter syndrome, where I'm like, oh my God, people are listening to what I'm saying, but I don't even, like, sometimes I don't even feel like I know what I'm talking about. So it's weird, but the fact that I can inspire someone to just start, that's it. That's all I ever want to do. So it's crazy, but I get tons of messages like that.
That's amazing. That must feel so good to just see that, like, what you put in and the hard work that you had didn't just pay off for yourself, but it inspired like a group of many people to take action in their lives.
Mm-hmm. And like, the things I say that inspire people the most are those things where I'm like, even if you don't feel good right now, it will get better. Just keep going. And like, getting those messages of like, oh, I didn't feel like going to the gym today, but I read your post and then I went. Those are like my favorite, because it's like, wow, that's amazing. Yeah.
It rebuilds that confidence that what you're doing is actually putting out value out there, because it's tough, you know, when you put stuff out on, especially social media, you never really know how it's going to be taken by people. And I'm sure you're like, am I providing value to people? Am I not? But, you know, by taking that risk and putting it out there, and I think drowning out the negativity by making that positivity that much louder, I think you're definitely doing an amazing thing with this generation. Thank you. Yeah, you're welcome. If you just had to give like one last, you know, piece of advice or like a tip for someone, it may not necessarily be that they're starting, you know, like their weight loss journey or any kind of fitness or nutrition journey, like kind of what would you recommend, and how did you apply those to get through to where you are now?
I think it just goes back to just start. That's like my favorite thing to say. And the advice that I give people all the time is start each day as if the last day didn't exist. No matter what you're doing, if you had an amazing day, great, but today is new, so you don't know what's going to happen. So start each day fresh is my favorite thing that I tell everybody. If you had a crappy day, just start all over again, because it doesn't even matter anymore. So that's what I live by. That's what I did for the past 2 years. No matter what happened the day before, each new day I woke up and I was like, okay, what can I do today to make sure it's better than yesterday, to make sure it's as good as yesterday, and to just keep moving forward and just starting each day again, committing to yourself every single morning.
Yeah, that's amazing. Yeah. I love that. Thanks for sharing that. I think that's really insightful, and I completely agree with that. That's awesome. The last thing would be, if you want to let people know if they want to connect with you, where's the best place to find you, and on what platform?
Instagram. At Jovana Fit. That's where I am all the time.
At Jovana Fit on Instagram. Amazing. Well, thanks for being part of the podcast. It was awesome to have you. And again, guys, my name is Aryan. I'm the founder of K Nutri and Ketovation. And if you want to find our new launch of supplements this week, we're at www.knutri.com. And you can look forward to that as well. So thanks, Jovana.
Thank you.